he's being pushed into that direction in a way.
Yeah, I think there's probably been a certain psychological profiling of him. Certain weak spots were identified, capitalized upon, and have been, worked on to the point that he's come out saying that.
Got really loud just now. Let me see if I did something. Yeah, I did. Wait, what the heck? Okay, so I got on my keyboard and it just took a. So I hit the volume.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's bringing on like a lot of mainstream neuroscientists.
Okay.
People who are just like, he should know better, right? But he's still bringing on these like mainstream empiricist Darwinian neuroscientists who are, who he believes are really wise people. It's just but again, I think for me, and going back to was Jesus an initiate of the Eleusinian mysteries? It's a big thing that's out there. I promise you, it's huge, and they're going to be only amplifying that, and it is tied to the normalization of a new form of post-Christian sets of spiritual cults, some of which will be masquerading as Christian, but they won't really be. They'll have the moral principles of Christianity removed, and they will only be tied to the spiritual feeling state you get, which can be maybe amplified with a set of drugs. DMT, psilocybin will be two that have been used also in ancient times and were used. I believe they really were used during the initiation rituals of the Eleusinian mysteries and other mystery cults before, during, and after Christ. That was part of the world then, just as it is today, just like Aleister Crowley today. It's nothing new. And
he lives in Austin, doesn't he, Shireen? Or Cherie?
What?
Joe Rogan. I think he moved to Austin. He lives here in Austin, Texas.
Oh, could be.
I think so. Everybody's moving here, and it's like they've messed our city up so bad. I don't know why they're moving here. It's gotten really dangerous. But, I mean, not where I am, but, we got defunded. Remember? We got defunded right off the bat. Austin, Texas got defunded right off the bat. Yeah, so Austin, Texas, and all the, Portland and Seattle all got defunded at the same time.
So how much of your police force did you lose?
Oh, at least a third, if not more.
Fuck.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's bad. In fact, for a while, people were speeding because there were no police. They break into businesses and there's no police.
Oh. And on the off chance that they do get arrested for robbery or something, they're out the same evening even.
Because we have Soros DA. So the Uber driver, when they did that, the riots right off the bat, the Uber driver who drove accidentally into them, and there was a guy right before carrying an AK-47 saying, yeah, he's acting all tough. He raises his AK at this guy, and this guy is in the army and has a gun, so he shoots him. And they convicted him.
Oh, yeah. My God.
Yeah.
My God.
Yeah, and all the evidence is there that the guy was an idiot.
It's insane.
And brought it on himself. So, yeah, we have a really difficult situation here. But the DPS got involved. So they got the DPS recently to help the police, the Department of Public Safety, and then they voted against that, the corrupt city council, I guess, voted against it. And I think now they've come back to help again. But yeah, I guess they got to take down Texas.
They got to take down Texas. That's a high priority.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
You work for Austin Police, Cherie? Wow. Well, you can put all the details in here. I know they told the DPS to get out. Well, didn't they come back? Oh, good. Good. I hadn't followed the last part of that. Well, cool. You only had 90 minutes, right, Matt? I already took an extra 15 minutes from you.
Nah, it's fun. It's always fun.
So just in case you have a few more minutes. China.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so I know your wife, Cynthia, did something on China's not the enemy. Are they, but they are coming across the border. Is there a bad Chinese that's coming across the border? I mean, Michael Yon?
No. Look, here, what's going on? There is a policy that's true run by George Soros to destroy nation states by opening borders massively and destroying the idea of sovereign national identities. That's been a longstanding operation going back a very long time. That's true. It also, for that to work, there's several things that have to happen for that to function. Number one, people have to want to leave their countries. To do that, that's not easy to do. So how do you do that? Well, you have to destroy their countries. There's several ways of doing that. You could bomb their countries like we've done to the Middle East, Libya, Iraq, right? You just make their Africa, you make their lives ungovernable, unlivable, so that you create people who feel like they have to leave. You could also destroy it economically too. So like what we've done since World War II, you could use the IMF, the World Bank to economically destroy nations by creating debt slavery across the board, right? You put in dictators that you like that are trained in Harvard or Oxford, and then you install them in their local country, and you have them become an instrument of their Wall Street or London masters. That's another way of doing it, where 99% of the people will suffer, but they will suffer as part of the extraction of the wealth of the soil under their land that will be run by the corporations like Barrick Gold or Royal Dutch Shell or something that'll just control their resources. The other way is through speculation. So this is another thing that George Soros was created and deployed to do, would be to speculate against currencies and nations that were misbehaving. By that, I mean defending their people from globalization. And when they would do that, whether it was Mahathir Mohamad in Malaysia or anybody, you speculate against their currency, destroy their currency, kill a bunch of people by destroying their economy, and then reabsorb the crippled nation back under the cage. So there's a variety of tools that are used in the evil tool basket to destroy nations so that people feel like they're forced to leave their country. So there is an open border policy from Biden, obviously, to flood America with immigration. That's true. Except if you're from Canada, that doesn't work. You're not allowed to go to the U.S.
Or Cuba. Or Cuba.
Oh yeah.
So, Cuba. But the reason I say that is because Michael Yon is in the Darien Gap in Panama, and he said that, and he was, talking about a lot of these, and they showed some pictures of them. A lot of these they actually are what President Trump is talking about, which is they're emptying their jails and their, asylums to head this way. And so a lot of these buses are full of these operatives. I mean, these terrorists and gang members. And he said, and the Chinese are coming across as well. So that's why I'm asking that.
Well, we're mixing up several things right now. So you have like the worst of many societies being brought in. That's one thing that's happening. Then you have desperate people trying to seek survival. That's another grouping. I would say that from what I've seen, there has been, like, China kicked out George Soros in 1989. Russia kicked out George Soros in 2014.
God, that's amazing.
That was not easy. That was a war that they both launched, and they're still fighting against certain assets run by the Soros and CIA operatives who are still there in Russia and in China, but they've done a pretty good job so far. But it's an ongoing fight. Jack Ma is one of these World Economic Forum assets who was deployed to take down the Chinese from the inside. That began already in 1999. So I could see that there is this ongoing heated fight over the survival of China against the deep state inside of China. At the same time, I also know that there is economic war against China. Like, the war's already begun against both Russia and China. It's just not taken the conventional form of old school bombs, because these are nuclear powered countries with nuclear bombs. So they won't tend to launch the old school wars like we used to know of back in the day. There is economic war, the effort to try to sabotage China's electrochemical industries. That's something that's been underway. A lot of sanctioning has been going on, both first tier, second tier, third tier sanctioning of Chinese companies directly, or any Chinese company doing business, a Russian company or with an Iranian company. There's 30 countries on the U.S. sanction list right now, just as an example of all the countries that, and a sanction, you could kill more people with sanctions. It's people under power of destruction of sanctions.
I remember you saying that on Sean's interview with you, that they kill more people by starving them out than war.
Yeah, you just make doing business in that country economically impossible by punishing everybody around that country who would normally do business with that country's businesses. All of a sudden they can't. So without the businesses, that whole economy crashes. And then you can't afford to pay for food. You can't, I mean, people, it's bad. So there is a war, a very dishonest economic war against China. That's true. And it has resulted in a certain difficulty in living for some people who are affected negatively by this inside of China, who have tried to seek a better life.
Okay.
By not that they want to, but that they feel like they have to, just as they have from other Asian economies who have also been suffering from this economic war. So to then say, though, and I think this is the problem, is that the alternative media that you and I interface with and that we tend to live in, and we swim in this ecosystem, there's been a huge effort, a lot of energy to try to convince people that the Chinese are responsible for the immigration problem, or that they're coordinating it somehow. Because then they'll take pictures of, look, there's Chinese people coming in, thus they must be behind it. And it's like, wait a minute, there's also Algerians, there's Africans, there's all these other people coming in.
Right.
Are they behind it? Like, no, there's a bigger picture, context, right? Word of the day. So it's always important to look at that. But no, I wouldn't say China is behind the immigration problem.
So, well, not that they're behind it, but that they are also invading, because they've tried to say, well, the Chinese, have troops. And I didn't know how true that was. I didn't know if I believed that at all, that there were, Chinese troops.
Yeah, they do, but they're.
Didn't we see some video footage from Canada of Chinese marching?
You know what it is? It's Taiwanese. The U.S. military has had military training agreements with Taiwan because they want to turn Taiwan into a Ukraine and to use it as a proxy for a war with China mainland. Now, Taiwan is legally recognized as an autonomous province of China. It's not its own country.
Right, just like Ukraine.
Just like Ukraine. Well, Ukraine actually has more reason to claim itself as an independent country, more so than
they're not, right? They've never been an independent country.
Well, they were more independent. Like, they were given independence in the 1990s, especially when the Soviet Union disintegrated. There was a constitution for them, and so you could say they actually have a legal claim, much more of a legal claim to be an independent country than Taiwan does, which has never. It's always been, even in the U.S. State Department, Canadian State Department, it's all recognized as an autonomous province of China. So they can't go making, as a province, you can't make an international bilateral military agreement with a hostile country unilaterally. You have to go through your government. Like, there's a way this works. But the U.S. is trying to provoke them and turn them into a Ukraine. And so they've got, part of that is involved training Taiwanese troops on U.S. soil in several bases. We're doing that in Canada too. So, ignorant. Yeah,
we don't know, it's like we're being told that.
Yeah, like Fort Bragg and stuff. And they're like, hey, wait a minute, there's a bunch of Chinese out there. Oh my God, Chinese are invading. And it's like, wait a minute. No, they're not all equal, right? It's
right. They just look alike, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so next question. So you said that the Chinese were bringing a lot of people out of poverty in China.
Yeah.
Did I understand that correctly? That in one of your interviews, that they're bringing a lot of people out, they're helping a lot of people. So then what is it we're seeing when we see, do we have two factions in China where we're seeing the people that are locked into their homes and not allowed out, and they're starving them out in these buildings and these smart cities in China? What's true and what's not then? What are we seeing and hearing that's true and what that is not?
So we're being given a game of narrative framing. So people are given a picture or some out of context little splicing of a video from a phone, and then the narrative framers will frame the emotions you're supposed to feel and the context you're supposed to interpret that image or that little video from. That's how the game is played. In the case of what you brought up, people being locked in their houses under COVID, that was something very emotionally charging. That what's out of context is that for those areas within that district of China that you saw doors being like smoldered. Smold, is that the word for it?
Soldered.
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 Yeah, shut. Those are side entrances of buildings during the heat of the fear porn of COVID, when nobody knew what the hell was going on, right? And you have apartment buildings that had a lot of side doors and side ways to get out of side entrances that were all shut because they wanted people going in and out of one single controlled entrance exit. And we were told in the West that what we were seeing were people actually being like locked into their houses and starved to death. It wasn't the case. They just wanted people to go through one entrance where some dude had the job of holding like a thermometer to your head as you walk in and out. That's a very different picture all of a sudden.
Wow. And then you had the dog robot going down the street. Remember that one? What was that?
That's a dog robot going down the street. It's like a prototype dog robot that they're toying around with. That's not in China. That's not like
so that wasn't even in China.
Oh, it wasn't even China? Okay, well, there you go.
No, I'm asking you. They said it was in China.
That might have been in some neighborhood in China where somebody was testing out.
But it was supposed to be controlling all the people who were locked in their homes and not being allowed out.
No,
that were starving.
That's like a prototype that is being toyed with by some startup company, showing something around, like showing something to their investors, saying like, hey, invest in this. And then we're given this idea that you have all over China, this like controlled robot system monitoring people. It's you take something little myopic out of context, and then you control the generalization of the thing. It's like the triangles, right? Like this person
to make us think China's so bad, so they're invading us because they want to take control of us, and they want to, go ahead and take our organs. And then what's this about the Falun Gong really being bad and not good?
I would say, just because I only have a couple of minutes left, I have, with my wife and I, produced 2 magazines called Breaking Free of Anti-China Psyops, number 1 and number 2. This is number 2. Number 1 is the first one to start with. They're both on CanadianPatriot.org. If people want a free copy, write me at Canadian Patriot 1776 at tutanota.com. If you want a free PDF, I'll email you one. If you want to buy it on Amazon, do that. Doesn't matter. Falun Gong, you know what Scientology is?
Yes.
Okay, you know L. Ron Hubbard, right?
Yes.
Okay, he's a devotee of Aleister Crowley at the Ordo Templi Orientis. He's a Satanist who thought himself as, when Aleister Crowley died, L. Ron Hubbard thought of himself as the Antichrist, the beast, Satan himself. He didn't worship Satan. As his son himself testified in a 1983 interview, L. Ron Hubbard believed he was Satan. So the whole crafting of Scientology was a retooled form of occult black magic, but done in a way that had a sci-fi vibe to it, with initiation that was just redubbed, operating Thetan 1 through 8. But the idea was to purge us. So he had this view that we're the composites of these alien demonic forces that are the cause of our neurotic disorders that we have to purge by going through auditing. This is what Charles Manson also was put through in the 60s. That involves some electromagnetic questioning and an apparatus that he created. The idea is to purge yourself and become a pure being, devoid of these foreign thetans, body thetans. At which point you become like him, some superpowered being. Falun Gong. There is a Chinese synthetic cult, a satanic. I'm quite convinced this is like a Chinese satanic cult that was created in 1991, called Falun Gong, that utilize certain ancient techniques that are fine. They're good exercises of qigong exercises. They're breathing. They balance your electromagnetic like the meridians that we have in our body. This is something the Chinese have been doing for thousands of years. It's perfectly good and healthy to do this. However, they've got their whole spin on it under Li Hongzhi, who's the founder, who came to this revelation that he's an intergalactic messiah, and that we're all contaminated with these body aliens from other dimensions that we have to purge by going through his meditative techniques and going through a rite of initiation on his 420-acre estate in New York, protected by the CIA, which is where New Tang Dynasty is based, which runs Epoch Times. It owns Epoch Times.
This is why you're saying Epoch Times isn't good.
Yeah, because it's run by New Tang Dynasty, which is run by Falun Gong, which has this intergalactic messiah, probably Satanist, Asian
But are the
Scientologists.
reporters bad also, or they don't know?
I think that they probably don't know, and they're probably devotees of Falun Gong, and they might have been initiated to a high degree, because at a certain point, and people who have defected from that cult have talked about what they went through, and there's many people who have talked about this, which is that Li Hongji, just like L. Ron Hubbard, professes that he could read your mind, he can heal you, he's got telekinetic, telepathic powers, he communicates with the aliens, he's fighting the aliens on the other dimensions. They probably have been led to believe that, because I think to be a reporter, to be trusted to be a voice for Epoch Times, requires that you were initiated to a certain degree to be trusted. So I think to a certain, I would not say that they're necessarily self-aware. It is. They probably do think.
So they don't know that. So they don't know that they're in a cult, and that they're.
Nobody in a cult will admit that they're in a cult. You can't see. You just think that you're on the right path and everyone else is in the Shadowland, which is why also they say that the Chinese want to only consume the organs of the Falun Gong. Because why aren't you also taking the organs of the other people who are not Falun Gong? It's because the Falun Gong, by going through their electromagnetic special retooled Qigong exercises overseen by Master Li Hongji, have the purest divine organs of humanity, the best blood, the best organs, because of those exercises. And the Chinese government is working with the evil aliens who want to consume and use our bodily fluids, and specifically the bodily fluids of the purest of the people, who are better than everybody else because they've gone through their rites of initiation under Master Li.
So they really are taking. So it is true that they're really taking the Falun Gong's organs. No, it's not true.
There's never been any. It's all based on anecdotal. It's all based on anecdotal evidence. Damn. If you try to find any actual evidence, like the kind of evidence you could actually take to court, as far as which that's not anecdotal, right? It doesn't exist. And what does exist is highly, highly self-contradictory. Like, for example, they had a hearing going through the whole thing, and they had people testifying of the organs that they've had taken from them. They refused to get their x-rays to see which organs was it. Was this one? There was the people who were testifying were describing how they were tortured by the Chinese who took their organs, but the Chinese weren't even giving them water. They were making them drink their own urine. And it's wait a minute. And that
they're in these camps and being tortured. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's well, then
I haven't seen my mother in I don't know how long.
If I want to take your organ, if I want to take your kidneys, for example, which is what this person was saying they want to do, they want to take their kidneys out to use for themselves because my kidneys are so pure. Why am I making you drink your urine, which is going to be doing damage to the same organs that I want to?
Right.
It's over the top. But
it doesn't make any sense.
No. You'd be giving them high quality water and good food until you do the surgery, right? Weird lame shit like that.
None of it makes. It's just like the stuff they're telling us now that doesn't make any sense. Where did you say they could email you?
Canadian Patriot 1776 at tutanota.com. Tutanota is
it's where you messaged me from.
Yeah, tutanota.com. Tutanota. It's a German encrypted emailing service.
Is this it? Did I do this right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So either go to my website, buy the books there, or go to send me an email there. Is the imprisonment and abuse of Uyghurs truce? Asks Suze Ballard. No, that's also cooked up by the World Uyghur Congress, which is funded by the CIA mouthpiece, the National Endowment for Democracy. If you look at any of the official reports, just read the reports that are being used and recited by the U.S. government and the State Department and the United Nations and every country that's sanctioning China. Canada is sanctioning China, like Justin Trudeau sanctioning them over the Uyghur genocide. Look at the reports that are being used. Read the reports. They're actually not usually that long. What they're doing is they're using a very dishonest statistical method of sampling. Because they say, okay, the last evidence we have is that there was 26,000 mosques in China. And then they say, okay, based on the satellite imagery that's been given to these agencies by the U.S. State Department, so that we're given satellite images, we will focus on a sample of 480 religious sites and mosques. Of that sampling of 480, we discovered that over 5 years, the pictures that we had 5 years ago versus today, 30% of them are either damaged or destroyed. And then what they'll do is they'll extrapolate that small data set. And first of all, who even selected those 480 sample sites that you're using, right? But you selected that, and then you extrapolate outwards, and you say, thus we'll assume that same ratio holds true for the full 26,000. And thus we could say that same number have been destroyed. Thousands and thousands of mosques have been destroyed in a cultural genocide against the Uyghurs. And then they'll say, based on satellite imagery, we could see that, and it's true. Like, first of all, there are retraining centers, and that's true. However, there's also a problem where there were several hundred cases of radical Islamic terrorist acts of terror in China, which shares a border with Afghanistan. There's an 80-mile border shared with Afghanistan and China. Many of the Muslim Chinese in Xinjiang worked with Al Qaeda and ISIS in Syria and Iraq, going back for 20 years. They got their battle hardened. Many of them were radicalized by the US, the CIA, and Saudis over the course of the 90s even. So China had a problem, just like America did, of Islamic terrorists. The problem was that people didn't want to talk about is that those Islamic terrorists were created by the CIA. Starting in the late 70s, when Zbigniew Brzezinski was funding radicalizing madrasas as part of the proxy war in Afghanistan to suck the Soviets into a war that they couldn't win. And we would do that by playing the Islamic card, by radicalizing a young generation of Muslim men who had no prospects economically for a future. They were given a radicalized version of the Salafist Quran, and they were overseen by CIA paid assets of imams who would then put them to work to blow themselves up, to go have, meet with 72 virgins, really crazy shit. This fucked up a lot of young men, and it was created by the CIA. It also brainwashed a lot of young Chinese in Xinjiang. So the Chinese did what we didn't do. They didn't bomb another country to the Stone Age in response to their Islamic terrorist problem. What they did is they provided massive economic opportunities to get a job, develop a trade, skill sets, and also learn new languages, like learn Mandarin, learn civics, but do it while you're learning a trade, carpentry, other things, plumbing. And then they created a means of developing. So now in Xinjiang, there's 2 high-speed rail networks. There's better internet than I have here in my part of Montreal. You actually have a lot of hope. They doubled the population. So for a place that's gone through genocide, the Muslim population has doubled from 1980 to today. The average life expectancy went from 46 years of age, which it was 40 years ago, to the point of being 75 years of age, which is nearly more than the U.S. average life expectancy.
Especially now.
They've got over 20,000 mosques, which is a greater per capita ratio of mosques per capita than any other non-Muslim country in the world. So if you want to call that a genocide, that's the most unsuccessful genocide I have ever seen in my life. And when they say there are these concentration camp facilities, the only evidence I've ever seen, other than number one, a few pieces of anecdotal testimonies from people who weren't even in China but are actually in Germany or Turkey, paid for by the National Endowment for Democracy, which is a CIA front group. The only other evidence are satellite images of random buildings that have fences around them that they say, oh, look, there's people in the buildings. Well, you know what those buildings look like? Any friggin' school in North America, which often features a fence around a building, right? It's
isn't there a website that you can see where that picture is actually from and what year? What's that called?
I don't know the name of it.
There is where you can. So a lot of these pictures and video footage, there is a website that you can put it in, and it'll tell you, oh, that was shown in 1990 or 2014. That building wasn't blowing up right now in Ukraine. That is from 2014. There's a website. I always
send me that website. I would love to see that website.
There is.
Please send me that website.
Yes, and I need to remember it because I keep hearing somebody shares it, and then I'm like, oh my God, I didn't write that down. Yes, you can put footage and pictures in, and it will tell you exactly when it was
Cool.
shown before.
That's very cool. I will use that. Please send it to me.
I will. I'm
All
gonna
right.
really do some digging. Well, Matt, thank you so much. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it. This is just awesome to have you on and give us so much information and connect dots for us. Gosh,
It's my pleasure.
heartbreaking. I mean, the Falun Gong I thought was a really good group. You know, that they really were what they said they were.
Not just poor Scientology cultists. I mean, it's an Asian Scientology thing, and it's what it is. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for being here. We'll have Matt on again soon. Write all your